I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad. Out on life's road.
All right, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie, episode 19 with Kevin Thiemann, and I'm going to introduce you to this amazing warrior in a minute. But first, let me talk to you about Warrior versus Zombie. If you're just tuning in to our podcast, you'll find that success for warriors is a journey, not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for a path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. In each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life. Entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, pastors, musicians, anything, virtually any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors all have a cause, they have unique value, and really a vision that goes generations into the future. Kevin Thiemann is truly one of those warriors. He's an amazing warrior and really on many levels. Somebody I admire greatly. He's a business owner, an entrepreneur, a servant leader, and an awesome father, and I've talked to his kids, so I know that to be true. He started his 20-year warrior journey in Arkansas in a college Christian ministry. This ultimately led him to an 11-year stint in India, where he built an organization of over 100 missionaries in 10 major Indian cities. During this time, he began a side hustle selling Indian-made fountain pens. After some major, what I would call zombie encounters in India surrounding his family and his missionary organization, he ended up moving to Dallas, where he planned to start a Dallas ministry, and those plans fell apart along with his marriage. However, in spite of everything, his fountain pen side hustle had grown substantially, and he's now the founder and owner of Fountain Pen Revolution, which became his full-time business in 2017. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Kevin Thiemann to Warrior versus Zombie. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks so much, Dave. It's a pleasure and an honor to join you this afternoon.
So how are you doing today in all of this craziness and excitement that's going on? I feel like we're starting to get back to doing business every episode. So far, we've been in one form or another anticipating or dealing with COVID-19 or other things in our real world. And what's really impacting your world today?
You know, I'm glad we're starting to get back to normal. I'm not going to lie. Everything about the quarantine and the pandemic, I haven't hated. I regret that it all happened, but I've gotten a lot of extra family time, painted the house, got a lot of things done around the house. With the kids not being in sports nonstop, we've been together more and played games. And, I'm excited we're coming out of that and the kids are getting back to school and things are getting back to normal. But I think the isolation of the whole thing maybe hit me a little less hard than it did other people, because I actually felt like there were some opportunities that came out of it.
Well, that's kind of interesting because you clearly are then a warrior guest like most of the ones we've had, because everybody is acknowledged and they acknowledge what's going on, but instead of looking for the oh woe is me and looking back and saying I wish it was like that. I mean, sure, we all liked a lot of things going on before, but you actually you're facing what we're going through right now as an opportunity rather than a challenge, at least in its entirety, which is really the way I think as warriors, as entrepreneurs, as people in ministry, I don't care what your walk of life is, that's a practice that I think we all have to practice more, right?
Absolutely, I agree.
So what else? How's your family dealing with it? How are the other people? I know you're relatively new in a new family. I mentioned, didn't mention your marriage in the introduction, and you'll be able to tell a little of that story in the next segment. But just specifically, how's things going besides just that you're seeing opportunities?
Yeah, well, it's been an extremely long summer, right? I mean, I asked my kids if they were excited about the summer starting, 3 months ago, and they're like, Dad, it's already been summer for 3 months, and now they're glad to be getting back to school. The summer did create some unique opportunities, especially for my oldest. My oldest son is particularly ambitious, so he decided with all of his extra summertime, extended summertime, he was going to start his own pottery business. He's been throwing pottery, built his own pottery wheel at age 13, and then saved up money and bought an electric one, and then bought a kiln and started a website, and has actually been selling pottery. So I've been helping him. I do a lot of online sales and shipping and stuff like that. And so it's been fun for us to work together on, how to do that and how to market and how to ship these things. And, I've enjoyed being able to help him. I've got all the shipping stuff available. I can help you start this business, and apart from that, we've played a whole lot of Texas Hold'em this summer. I don't know if you like that game or not, but we'll sit down in the evening and everybody throws down a $5 bill, and we see who walks away with the money, and lots of games and some good family fun. I think we're all ready to get back to school and things, but fortunately for me, business has been good over this. Again, online sales has sort of created an opportunity to ramp that up actually over this. My wife is a lawyer, and people keep suing each other no matter what. So.
Well, that's awesome, and it's great to hear that your son is building. He's taking after his dad, I guess. He's starting his own online business, and it's awesome that you have an opportunity to help him with that. It's also awesome to hear that they're going back to school. That's one of the big challenges in some of my networks and some of the warriors that are out there in different parts of the country. I have warriors on from San Francisco and Florida and Georgia and a number of other places that have been guests on here, and not everybody's in the same place or same mindset. So it's great to hear that you're planning to go back. I think most kids are ready to go back. I mean, I don't care what people say. I believe, and I know I deal with all aspects of our society and my networks. I got a very large network, and most everybody I know is wanting to get back to the kids, whether it's the kids or the parents, back to school the way it was before we shut things down. So that's a beautiful thing. Well, this is what we're going to do. I think we've had a good check-in here. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to hear a little bit from Ricky Jean Wright, our theme song, It's Not the Getting There. And then we'll be back with Kevin Thiemann and Warrior versus Zombie, and we'll be talking about his journey. So let's hear a little of It's Not the Getting There.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey. Every day.
All right, we're back with Warrior versus Zombie, and the check-in segment was awesome. And it was great to hear from Kevin. And now I'm really interested, Kevin, and the audience is, I'm sure, very interested, because my little intro probably gave them some things that they wanted to hear a little more about and kind of get some more insights to. But I want to hear about your journey. How did you get from the beginning to where you are today? Help us with that a little bit.
Absolutely. I appreciate you asking. I knew from the time I was in high school that I wanted to do full-time ministry. I wanted to do that at a vocational level, and graduated high school and went to like this super, I almost want to say anti-Christian college. It was the best possible thing that could have happened for my faith, and that I took philosophy and religion classes, and I was always sort of the token Christian. And I saw a lot of people walk away from the faith during that time. For me, it really grew my faith. And over the course of those 4 years, realized, I didn't just want to be, I knew I wanted to be in vocational ministry in general, but I specifically wanted to be an overseas missionary. I wanted to be in a place where, there wasn't a church on every corner, sort of an unreached area of the world. And graduated from college with that goal in mind. Honestly, tried to live even during college, trying to learn the things I would need to learn, live the ways I would need to live, in terms of materialism and learning to resist desires and the stuff that America throws at you in a lot of ways, because I was going to live in a place that probably wasn't like that, more third world. Graduated and went on staff with a college ministry, and within a short period of time had an opportunity to go overseas. I was asked to lead a group of 10 recent college graduates to go to India for a year. And exactly the type of opportunity I was looking for, no brainer, accepted it. We packed up, went to India. About halfway through that year, the organization said, well, hey, this is going well, and we'd really like this to be a long-term effort, and we need someone to lead it. Would you consider leading this and just keep going? You can pick whatever city you want. You can put together a team. And that started about a 10 or 11 year process of we decided to move to New Delhi, India, put together a team to go with us. And we started out, again, there was like 10 people, all on short-term commitments. And over the course of the next decade, we grew that to around about 100 full-time missionaries. We were spread out over 7 to 8 major cities throughout the country. I loved it. It wasn't easy, Dave. It's part of what I loved about it is it was this challenge. I remember before we ever went, I met with another missionary from another organization, and I won't get into the details of what we're doing, but I told him what we wanted to accomplish, and he said that's impossible. You can't. Missionaries have tried to do that in the past. You can't reach those people. They're not going to be receptive. And if anybody knew me, they would know the best way to get me to do anything is to tell me that it's impossible to do that thing. So we set about doing that, and we're really seeing some amazing results. Got to the point where other organizations, honestly, were contacting me and leaders within our organization and saying, hey, will you come and speak to us? Will you teach us what you're doing that is leading to this kind of growth and this kind of success? And again, just my dream come true. If you would have asked my parents, they'd say, yeah, Kevin's going to die in India one day, and he doesn't even want his body brought home. We're just going to bury him over there. And then some zombies, as you like to call them, started to show up. Pardon the throat clear there. And then some zombies, as you like to call them, started to show up. In around 2013, 2014, a couple of major things happened. One of them is there was a little bit of a leadership shift in the organization that I was working for. And the result of that is the organization went from an environment that I considered to be very empowering and encouraging to an environment that sort of became oppressive and maybe I'd use the word legalistic, like here's the way. And it basically sort of brought in a new leader. And that leader was very specific about how he wanted things done. The thing is up until that point for 10 years, the organization had sort of said, build this thing, build it how you want to build it. And I invested a decade in building it into something that everybody agreed was exciting. And sort of this new guy comes in and is sort of shaking everything up. And to be honest, that brought a lot of stress, brought a lot of tension among the staff and the leaders within the organization. Simultaneously, I started dealing with some marital issues, and I won't go into that a whole lot, but both of these things were just really bringing some stress. And in 2015, after this is sort of festered for a year or two, by the way, what I'm going to get into a little later is at the same time I was starting this pen business in India and sort of growing that, but I'm going to sort of let that be the second half of this story. But 2015, my supervisor contacts me. He says, hey, we want you to come home, get some counseling. Let's have a powwow and see if we can figure out what's going on here. And clearly it'd be good for you to get a little bit of break from the field. And I agree, no problem. My wife and I agree, no problem. And we board a plane on, I think it was December 23rd of 2015. And as I'm passing through customs, the customs official looks at me real hard and he pulls out a piece of paper and he starts writing things down and he lets me know that I've been blacklisted. Now, the blacklist would be the same list that India would put terrorists on. They basically had concluded that I was doing missionary activity, which of course I was. I was on a business visa and was doing business. But at the same time, I was talking with people about Jesus and those types of things. And there had been a newly elected prime minister who's this right-wing guy, and they kicked me out. Never come back. Sort of imagine you decided to go on vacation to Colorado, and as you cross the Texas border, they said you can't come back. And you said, well, can I go get my car? And they said, no. Can I go gather the things home? No. You can just never go back to Texas ever again. And that's sort of what it was. And so I got back to America and, obviously was decimated in a lot of ways, right? This was my dream. I'd invested a decade, was really hurt by this, got back to the States. And, not long after that, the supervisors of my organization sat down with me and said, well, and I'd mentioned there'd already been some tension, right? They said, well, now that you've been kicked out of India, there's really just not a role for you with the organization. So, we're going to empower you to go do something else. Again, extremely hurtful. I built this thing for 10 years. All the leaders in the organization were sort of faithful to me and my leadership. And so super hurtful to just be told at that point, hey, you're out. And at that point, I got some counseling for a few months. I'm not going to lie to you, Dave. There were mornings, a lot of mornings, I'd wake up and get out of bed and I'd just sit by my bed and look out the window. It was not what I was anticipating from life. Didn't know how to receive it or handle it. I was meeting with a counselor, which was very helpful. All the while, there did continue to be this marital tension that honestly I thought was getting better through counseling. As I look back, I realized I was the one that was getting better, but not necessarily the situation getting better. So after a few months of that, in the middle of 2016, remember I was working in India and we started researching cities in the States that had a high Indian population, and Dallas is one of those cities. And so that's the reason I live here. There were 3 other couples who were kicked out of India at the same time as us, and we all got together and said, hey, what can we do? We still have this passion to minister to Indian people. Hey, let's move to Dallas. Let's all move to Dallas together. We can start a new organization that'll focus on like college students and young professionals in the Dallas area. Moved here the middle of 2016, got started with that. And about 3 months later, my wife at the time walked in and said, hey, I don't want to be married anymore. I don't love you anymore. I don't want to be married anymore. And I feel silly saying I was surprised because I'd mentioned there'd been some tension, but I didn't realize that it was at that level, to be honest, Dave. I received that and was just floored. Hey, can we get some counseling? No. Hey, can we drop the kids off at the grandparents' house and let's take a week and just work through things? No. When she said she was done, she was done. And, a couple months after that, she said, hey, I'd like you to move out. And I said, there's no way I'm leaving the kids. And so she left. And a year later, we were divorced. And that was the lowest point of my life. And I hope to never be at a point like that ever again. Something I never anticipated happening, right? I anticipated living my whole life on the mission field, 1. 2, anticipated being married, to the mother of my 3 children and with no plans of betraying that or ending that or whatever. And that, sometimes plans just don't go the way you expected they were. And that was a very difficult point of time for me. As a dad, as a human being, to be honest, talk about the zombies. The real zombies weren't, the things that happened, getting kicked out of India or having my wife leave me. I feel like the bigger zombies were more the voices in my head. There'd been some betrayal with the organization. There'd been some betrayal in this relationship. And what I walked away from that with was this voice in my head telling me, screaming at the top of its lungs, every time I would stop to listen, you are worthless. You are an utter failure. You have nothing to bring to anyone. What is the disgraced, ex-minister who's now divorced and has no purpose? There is nothing for you. And just remember, sort of one day at a time, one battle at a time, fighting that voice and getting from one day to the next, to be honest, sometimes 1 hour to the next, struggling through that period of time. So, to ask the question, what are some of the zombies? There's some things that happen. I think maybe for all of us, at least for me, the biggest zombies that we have to deal with aren't necessarily the circumstances that come to us, but what does that do inside our own head? What does that do to our identity? What does that do to our self-esteem? What does that do to how we we think God views us or other people we care about views us. And that was definitely the biggest zombie for me during that entire awful period.
Well, that is incredible. And thank you for sharing that with, I've heard parts of that. I don't think I've even heard the entire story the way you laid it out there, but it was very, very complete. And truly, that is, I think every warrior here can relate to the fact that it's not necessarily the bad things that happen to us when we're going down the road. It's basically the meaning we give to those things, and then how we internalize that puts a wall up sometimes. We see those things then as something that's in our way and keeping us from where we were supposed to be going, as opposed to just challenges we have to work our way around. And obviously it's easy to say in retrospect. I'm very impressed with where you're at today in terms of your mindset and how you're able to talk about it, because a lot of those kinds of things, any one of those things probably would have knocked the pins out of, as I say, some of us, but and probably most of us. So it's powerful that you're here. I want to get into your pen business, but I think the best way to do that is let's pick up with that in the next segment, where we talk about kind of where you are, why you're doing, because I know that was something that started in the midst of your ministry and the things you were doing. It was kind of like a side hustle. It was kind of like your cover, if you will, for being in ministry, but yet having a business in India and that kind of thing. So I kind of know a little bit of how that works, but I would like to hear kind of you connecting the story now to where you are today and where you're going in the next segment. And we'll talk about that when we come back. And then we'll hear a little bit of It's Not the Getting There from Ricky Jean Wright.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth are always.
All right, we're back with the third segment of Warrior versus Zombie. And what an amazing, incredible story that we heard from Kevin in the second segment. And now, Kevin, we're kind of here. We're in today's world. I want to talk to you about your pen business and some of the things that you're doing and why you're doing them and that kind of thing. So share with us how that kind of dovetails into your story and all that.
Absolutely. Well, to do that, let me go back in time a little bit. So I mentioned the pen business just briefly in the last segment, but it's sort of funny how the whole thing got started. In 2009, 2010, I don't know if you have any Indian friends, Dave, but if you do, you should check out their handwriting, because there's a good chance they have really good handwriting. That's just what I've noticed in general, is that something that's really valued in the Indian school system. Well, I had terrible handwriting, and my Indian friends would mock me for it all the time. So in around 2009, I decided, I'm going to try to improve my handwriting. This is probably a good life skill in general. And got online and was researching, how to improve your handwriting, and read something that said I should get a fountain pen. Now, honestly, I had never held a fountain pen before that time. I went to the store, I bought a cheap $6 fountain pen from some stationery shop in India, and instantly loved it. Instantly loved this. I've always been a pen guy. Loved writing specifically with a fountain pen. So, but I mentioned it was sort of a cheap fountain pen. It didn't last very long, sort of broke. So I started doing some research online on, what's a nicer fountain pen. And if you know anything about fountain pens, these things are expensive, right? You can drop $500, $800, $1,000 on a fountain pen, and you hadn't even started to get a nice one until you spend a couple $100. And I'm just not the type of guy that spends a couple $100 or $500 on a writing instrument, man. I'm an ex-missionary, right? So I start doing some research on how I can get a nice fountain pen, maybe a used one or something. And I'm on this fountain pen forum. It's called Fountain Pen Network. But anyway, I'm on this forum learning about this, and this guy contacts me and he says, hey, I see you're in India. I see you're from Arkansas. I'm living in Arkansas. I see you're living over there. I'm trying to get some Indian-made fountain pens, and starts naming some brands. And I'm like, man, I've never heard of any of this, but that sounds like an interesting scavenger hunt. So I'll go to some stationery stores and I'll see if I can help you find these pens. And I do. And he says, man, I will buy these pens off of you. And so I'm finding pens and he's buying them from me. And in the course of that, I'm also enjoying these pens. I'm buying pens that are very affordable and I'm enjoying writing with them. And I start looking online, and there's nowhere on the internet that you can find these Indian-made pens. Literally, not a single place that I could find. And I think, well, what if I started a website selling these Indian-made pens? And started and thought, this will be a little bit of pocket money for, vacations or something. It'll just be a fun hobby. And instantly, people were buying these pens more than I was anticipating. At the same time, something else was interesting was happening in India. The market for fountain pens in India the last decade has been, more than a decade really, has been tanking, because fountain pens just 20 years ago were required in the schools. Like every school child 15 or 20 years ago was writing with a fountain pen. That's what people used. And then that ended. It's like ballpoint pens reached India slow or something. I don't know. And the market dried up. Well, where this intersects my interest in Indian-made fountain pens is as I started researching more about these pens, what I was finding is manufacturers who were struggling to get sales, and simultaneously I was wanting their product. And so we built this relationship. And then the more I got into this business, the more I realized, well, there's actually what a person in the West wants out of a fountain pen, and what I wanted out of a fountain pen was a little different than your average Indian fountain pen. And so I'd go to these manufacturers and say, hey, if you could help me adjust your mold in this way, or if you could help me build a mold for a pen that would do this, and probably if I'd asked them that question 20 years ago, they would have said, we're busy with all of our sales. But because I came to them at the point of time that I did, they said, we would love, please tell us what you want, and we will help you build it, and we will help you to develop even your own line of pens. And so I basically stumbled into an opportunity to start creating an affordable line of fountain pens, and went from just buying manufacturers modeled pens, buying this particular brand or that particular brand, to literally creating our own brand. And I'm going to be honest with you, Dave, it just really felt like God was blessing this business beyond what made any sense to me. I was working full time, 50, 60 hours a week. I was not investing tons of time into this business, but it's like every time I'd invest some time, it would just multiply. And I over and over again found myself asking, God, why do you keep blessing? Thank you, but why do you keep blessing this business? Well, sort of fast forward a little bit. I sort of talked about getting kicked out of India, talked about, my marriage falling apart. At that point, I felt very, very, convicted or responsible or whatever, that I need to step away from ministry and focus on my family, right? I need to step away from my vocation. And that was in late 2016 or early 2017, somewhere in there. And I realized at that point, I was going to need another income, right? I've just quit my job. And at that point in time, the business had grown to a level that I realized if I could add about another 30% per month sales to this business, it could actually support my family. Now, by support, I mean just pay the bills. And I had about a 3-month window. Basically, the ministry that I was leaving behind cut me about a 2.5 to 3 month salary window, sort of a severance deal. And over those 3 months, I put full-time effort into this deal, ramped up the website, and thank you, God, literally, that within that 3-month period, I had hit that number of minimum sales that I need to be doing to get the bills paid. And since then, we have just kept growing. Our niche is the affordable end of things, which, believe it or not, there are more people in the U.S. getting into fountain pens now than in the last many years. I don't know if it goes along with straight razors and antique things and vintage stuff or whatever, but you'd think my average customer would be somebody that's 65. No, my average customer is might be 65, might be 27, and has a whole bunch of tats. The people who walk into my store all over the board. We've continued to develop new models of pens, continue to develop my own line of pens. We're eventually able to open a retail store. And I'm not saying we're packed every single day, but we have a brick and mortar in Plano, Texas, where you can come and buy pens. And obviously during COVID, that hasn't been as populated as normal, but have regular customers who come in. I think, I mentioned that business had been good over the whole coronavirus thing. And again, thank you, Jesus. One of the line of work that I'm in is products that is something that you can do at home and form a hobby, right? Calligraphy and handwriting. And so people getting online and buying something that they can form into a hobby and do at their home as they're quarantined means that online sales have actually been great. So that's sort of where I've come as far as business has gone. On a personal level, I showed up at church one Sunday, and I don't remember a few years ago, and my friend Tammy says, "Hey, I've got this friend Laura I want to tell you about." And I just thought she was talking, because if you know Tammy, which you do, Dave, she's sort of a talker. At the end of that, she says, hey, Kevin, why don't you come to lunch with my family? And at that point, I was a single dad, 3 kids. No one invites a single dad to lunch. We are weird animals that no one gets to see in the wild. And, so I get invited to lunch, and I'm like, yes, 100%. I'm in for lunch. Well, I go to lunch, and Tammy sits me next to this friend of hers named Laura. And I not even paying attention. And we have a nice conversation, and I have a son who's named after a philosopher, and the philosopher's name is Soren Kierkegaard. And I mentioned his name, and Laura says, "Oh, I know that philosopher. I've read books by him. Dave, you ever read any books by him?" Nobody's read any books by him. She brings him up and tells me about the books she's read by Soren Kierkegaard, and like, well, this is a very interesting woman. And the next Sunday comes, and Tammy invites me to lunch again, and I'll be darned if 6 months later I'm not married to Laura Giordano, and got a new stepson, and just feel amazingly blessed after what life had brought up to the point of 2016. And I just knew I was done, because I was used up. Just the blessings that God has brought since then. Not just financially, but how my kids are doing. To be remarried and be happy in that. Just feel like God has brought a lot of blessings, and I just want to give thanks to Him for what has happened.
Well, that's kind of an awesome place. One thing before we land the plane with this segment and get into what I call the land the plane segment is, so if anything were possible, where does your journey take you from here? Do you have a vision? Obviously, it appears that the whole pen thing kind of came into your world. You saw it, you gained an appreciation for it. It became part of the fabric of who you were, and became more and more evident that was going to continue to fund your journey into the next step. So where does fountain pen revolution or your life go from here, if anything were possible?
If anything were possible, I'm going to give the honest answer, and this is maybe less exciting, certainly less exciting than other segments on your podcast I've listened to. I don't know. To be quite honest, I ask God that question on a regular basis. Hey, where do you want me to go from here? And I feel like the answer that I keep getting, I'm not saying God's talking to me audibly, but as I'm trying to listen to God and pray and figure this thing out. The answer I feel like I keep getting over and over again is just wait and heal. It's difficult for me to be okay with that answer, because what I want to give you right now, Dave, is here's the vision that God has given me, and now I'm doing this amazing thing, and look, it's all rainbows and unicorn vomit. I don't know, man, and I'm okay with that for right now. I've got some extra time in life to pour into my family and my kids, and I know that's part of my calling. And I've got a sweet opportunity to build this business. Is that what God is going to have me doing long term? I honestly don't know. Would I end up back in full-time ministry at some point? Would I be able to build a business to the point where I was financially independent but had someone else to manage it, and I could do more ministry with my free time but not require that to be a paid position? I don't know. I'm okay with all that right now. I'm waiting for where God would have me go from here, asking Him that question, and just enjoying the blessing right now of a time of peace and healing, to be honest.
Well, you know what? That's a perfect answer, because a lot of times I have clients and or I have people on the guests that have that picture, but we're all at different points in our journey, right? And your recognition that you may be taking one step at a time and kind of seeing where it goes, and maybe your viewpoint is a week or two down the road or a month down the road. It doesn't have to be that. It's just that's a perfect thing. That's one of the reasons why we have warriors from all walks of life and at all places on their journey on this podcast, because a lot of us are there. I remember being there myself one time, where I kept asking God what I was supposed to do, because I didn't feel like I was doing what I needed, and he just told me to shut up. And I started running my life by what I called divine appointment. That was 6 months after I chose to retire, and literally everything that's come into my life since that point, including this podcast and some of the things that I'm doing with business owners and stuff, were all part of the revelation along the way of what I was really supposed to do. So that's a beautiful thing. Well, I'm going to do this. We've pretty much gotten what we need out of this segment. And when we come back, Kevin, I'm going to ask you, you've covered a lot of ground, and I know you've learned a lot through your journey, and I know we've learned a lot just listening to you tell the story and how you've gotten to this point. But if we were to take away one or two things from this podcast, what would you have us take away? So when we come back after a quick break with Ricky Jean Wright, I'm going to let you ask or answer those questions, and then I'm going to ask you, how do we stay in touch with you and continue to stay part of your journey as you go forward. So with that, let's end this segment of Warrior versus Zombie with Kevin Thiemann, and we'll be back in just a few seconds after hearing a little of Ricky Jean Wright.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul. And by the grace of God.
All right, we've been on an incredible journey here with Kevin Thiemann, and the warrior journey that he's been on, the one that he's on right now, and where he's going, and we're really looking forward to staying in touch there. But Kevin, there's so many things I know you've learned and experienced along the way. If there were one or two things that we could take away as listeners to this podcast that you would want us to make sure, the nuggets we took away, what would those be?
Yeah, I think, one of the things I didn't talk about, but I would say, is a key to getting through all this that was always in the background, is a solid circle of men. Let me define what I mean by that. You can sort of surround yourself with people who are going to just tell you what you want to hear. You can isolate yourself altogether. Somewhere in between is there being a small group of men, of people, men or women, who are going to stick with you no matter what, and who are also going to help you identify when you're getting off course. And those two things have to go together, I think. One, when everything falls apart, and you and I have talked about this before, Dave, when everything falls apart and hits the fan, you find out who your friends really are, and who weren't actually your friends, who were your friends because you were going somewhere. So when everything fell apart, it's not like this was a long list of people, but there were 2 or 3 guys. You've interviewed one of them before, Ed Trinkle, who, sometimes they just sit and listen to me cry. They'd listen to me cuss. They'd listen to me complain. They would be with me no matter what. And they would also, when it called for it, hey, Kevin, I don't think your thinking is right on this. I'd really encourage you to go down this path, not that path. Or, hey, I hear what you're saying. I understand everything you're feeling. But don't take that action. Don't. I got where I would, before I was going to send an email, especially regarding my ex, hey, I'm going to send this email off to this circle of friends, and hey, is this a good form of communication? Because I'm trying to create a positive atmosphere here, not a negative atmosphere. So the first thing I would say is the importance, and I just can't emphasize it enough. As men, we don't want to share, we don't want to open up. We want to sort of just go play golf and talk about nothing, or be by ourselves, and just the importance of there being a few men who you can ask the question, man, how are you really doing? And they feel free to answer, and you get that question back, and have a real sense of accountability and support. And there were a few guys that I know, Dave, I would not have made it through those years if it had not been for two or three guys that really stuck with me like brothers. One of them was my brother, by the way, during that period. So I think that would be the first thing that I would say, just the importance of that. The other one, and I know I'm an ex-minister, and I don't want to get all preachy, but just the importance of faith. I also don't think I would have made it through those years if I didn't know that there was a God who loved me and cared for me no matter what. Especially during those years when I felt just worthless, right? Just felt like I didn't have anything to give. But to know that there was a God that loved me even in the midst of that, man. And I'm not saying that's all like roses and flowers. I remember a couple of evenings where, man, I let God have it. I mean, I can't believe that lightning did not come down from the sky. God, I cannot believe you've done this. And this is what I think of you. And how could you have let this happen? And I'm not advocating that, but I'm just telling you that was real. That was part of my real relationship with God. So I'm saying that to say this wasn't all I'm singing hymns and, reading Bible verses, and they make me feel great all the time. But knowing that I had that unbreakable relationship with God because of his love for me through his son, Jesus, I also know that I wouldn't have made it through those years without the knowledge of that divine relationship. So those are the two biggest things I think I would say that really got me through that period and were, just cornerstones for me.
Wow. Well, I don't know that I can add a lot to that other than I found those things as well. And as warriors, I think keeping us moving on our journey, it's good to have brothers in arms that are along beside us. And it's also good to know that our connection beyond ourselves and the things that are bigger than ourselves and our God actually is there, even if it feels like even we're not. And that's one of the things, that's what you said, is that, you didn't believe in yourself. And at least in those moments where you were questioning everything, he kept telling you, I'm there. And that's a powerful feeling when you go forward. Well, this has been an incredible journey. And Kevin, I'm so thankful to know you as a friend. I'm so thankful to get to know you a little bit as a warrior. And I know that the audience is going to be more excited to get to know you going forward. And we really probably want to figure out how to get plugged into you and Fountain Pen Revolution or anything else. So how do we, give me a way that we can keep in touch with you as we go forward?
Absolutely. Well, my website is easy to reach because it's the same as the name of the business, fountainpenrevolution.com. And my email address is on there, and a contact us form is on there, and all that kind of stuff. And hey, if you're sitting around the house in the quarantine and you want a new hobby, or you want a nice pen but you don't want to spend $300 on one, fountainpenrevolution.com. One of the things we really value is customer service. So don't be afraid to shoot me an email and ask questions, or shoot me an email and say, hey, I heard your story and I'd love to have coffee and ask more or share mine or whatever. And I love doing that type of thing. So feel free to reach out.
Well, that's a great one. Fountainpenrevolution.com. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Fountainpenrevolution.com. So we'll definitely check that out. We'll all be checking that out after this episode, I'm sure. Well, it's been great to have you here, Kevin. Again, thank you so much for sharing your story, telling us where you're at and where you're going, and giving us those two very powerful nuggets at the end. For those of you who are listening, you know that Warrior versus Zombie, we're here weekly. We're on virtually every podcast platform, regardless of where you're listening to us today, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify or iHeartRadio. You can pretty much find us wherever we're at. And if you're a zombie and you need help from a warrior, I can assure you a lot of these warriors like Kevin and myself, we would love to serve you and help you in any way we can. So if you have those zombies in your life and you're a warrior and you're feeling like you're overwhelmed, then number one, tune in to some of these episodes of Warrior versus Zombie, because we're all in the same boat, guys or gals or whoever's listening. And so with that, we're going to end it with the final segment of It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. And again, I want to thank Kevin Thiemann for sharing his story with us today. Have a good day.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know.